Wife cheated on me with her old friend. I got revenge she never saw coming. Imagine building your life around someone, trusting them completely, only to discover that the one person you counted on most had been keeping a devastating secret. Emotional cheating. It's the kind of betrayal that cuts deep, often more painful than physical infidelity, because it shatters the bond you thought was unbreakable. In this story, you'll witness how one man's world crumbled when he uncovered the truth about his wife's hidden connection with someone from her past. The lies, the deceit, and the heartbreaking realization that the love he thought was real had been slipping away for years. Stay with us as we take you through this gut-wrenching journey of trust lost and the painful path to rebuilding life after betrayal. Before my life took a sharp turn, everything felt stable, predictable even. I had a routine, the kind that makes you believe everything is under control. Every morning was the same. Get up, shower, throw on the usual work clothes, grab a quick breakfast, and head to the job I had been doing for nearly a decade. I worked at a small logistics company, managing the ins and outs of warehouse operations. It wasn't thrilling work, but it was reliable. The kind of job where you know what to expect, and I found comfort in that. My marriage seemed just as stable. I married Sarah when I was 26, and now, at 34, I felt like I had built a life I could count on. I thought we were happy, or at least content. I never imagined I would be the kind of person whose life would unravel. Not me. I did all the right things, or so I thought. I followed the rules, treated people with respect, and gave everything I had to my work and my marriage. But life doesn't care how much you've invested. It has a way of blindsiding you, hitting you where it hurts most when you least expect it. My name is Alex Bennett. Like I said, I'm 34, and I worked as a manager in logistics. The company wasn't huge, just a local firm handling transport and storage for small businesses in the area. I was proud of my work, even if it wasn't glamorous. I liked being the kind of person people could rely on. Dependability. It's something I thought mattered most in life. People around me would call me one of the nice guys, always dependable and honest. I wasn't the guy to complain. I did my job well, and I believed that was enough. But as I would soon find out, being the nice guy doesn't always keep things from falling apart. Looking back now, I wonder if I missed the signs. Were there small moments, subtle hints that should have warned me my life wasn't as stable as I thought? I trusted Sarah completely, maybe too much. And maybe that's where things started to unravel. Meeting Sarah. I wasn't what you'd call a star student back in high school. My grades were nothing special, but I worked hard to keep up. I wasn't one of those people who just got it when it came to academics, so I spent my time trying to make up for what I lacked in natural ability with determination. I wasn't popular either, but I had a solid group of friends, people I could count on, even if we weren't the life of the party. My best friend Dylan was always there for me. He loved giving me a hard time about how awkward I was around girls, but it was all in good fun. He wasn't wrong either. I was never smooth or confident when it came to dating. In fact, I mostly kept to myself in that area. That's probably why I didn't have much of a dating history until Sarah came into my life. I was 24, and Dylan had dragged me along to a friend's housewarming party. I wasn't expecting much, just some drinks, small talk, and maybe a laugh or two. But sometimes life throws you a curveball when you least expect it. Dylan introduced me to Sarah, a freshly certified teacher who had just started her first job. She had this warm smile that made you feel instantly comfortable, and a laugh that seemed to light up the room. We hit it off right away. I'm not someone who usually clicks with people that quickly, but Sarah was different. We talked for hours that night, jumping from one topic to another, music, books, travel dreams, and eventually, our clumsy attempts at dancing. I'm no dancer, but Sarah loved to move, and she pulled me onto the dance floor without hesitation. It was the first time I ever enjoyed dancing. By the end of the night, Sarah asked me if I wanted to see her again. I said yes without thinking twice. It felt easy with her, and that wasn't something I was used to. Over the next few months, we spent more and more time together. Every date, every conversation just felt natural, and before long, I realized I was falling for her. My family noticed too. My mom used to tease me about how often I mentioned Sarah, and she wasn't wrong. I couldn't stop talking about her. She became the person I couldn't wait to see at the end of the day, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I had found someone who understood me completely. Marriage and adjustments. 3 years after we started dating, Sarah and I decided to get married. Neither of us wanted a big, extravagant wedding, so we kept it small and intimate. Only our closest friends and family were there. Dylan, of course, was my best man, and Sarah's childhood friend Lily stood by her side as her maid of honor. The ceremony took place on a clear spring day in a small garden behind Sarah's parents' house. I remember looking at her during the vows, feeling completely sure that I was making the best decision of my life. We had this connection, this bond, and I was convinced that it would only grow stronger with time. After the wedding, Sarah moved into my apartment. It wasn't anything fancy, but I had made it my own over the years. It was a small one-bedroom place I had inherited from my uncle. I'd spent months fixing it up, painting the walls, putting in new shelves, updating the kitchen. Sarah seemed happy with it, or at least she said she was. But after a few months of living together, I started to notice small things. She wasn't as excited about the apartment as she had been at first. We had our first real disagreement over something I never expected: money. Sarah wanted to keep our finances separate, something that caught me off guard. I had assumed, now that we were married, we'd share everything, including bank accounts. But Sarah had other ideas. She said she felt more comfortable managing her own money, and at first, I didn't understand. I thought marriage meant merging everything, but she had her own approach. In the end, we compromised, opening a joint account for shared expenses while keeping our personal accounts separate. I wasn't thrilled about it, but I let it go. I figured marriage was about compromise, and this was just one of those things I had to accept. And for a while, things settled back into routine. We both worked hard, me at the warehouse, and Sarah at the local elementary school. She loved her job, and I loved seeing her happy. We didn't see each other as much as I would have liked, especially since her teaching schedule sometimes included long nights preparing lessons or grading papers. But we made it work, spending our weekends together, going on short trips, and hosting dinners with friends. It felt like we had built something solid. Or at least I thought we had. The anniversary surprise. Our 10th wedding anniversary was approaching, and I wanted to do something special. 10 years together felt like a huge accomplishment, and I wanted Sarah to know how much she meant to me, even after all this time. So I started planning a surprise. I reached out to Lily, Sarah's best friend, to help with the details. Together, we planned a weekend getaway to a charming little bed and breakfast a couple of hours away. I booked a cozy room with a view of the mountains, made reservations at a nice restaurant, and even organized a night of dancing. Sarah loved to dance, and I thought it would be the perfect way to celebrate. I kept it all a secret, waiting until the night before we were supposed to leave to tell her. When I finally revealed the plan, Sarah seemed genuinely excited. She smiled and hugged me, telling me how thoughtful the whole thing was. I felt like I had nailed it. I couldn't wait for us to spend some quality time together, away from the stress of daily life. The weekend started off perfectly. We arrived at the bed and breakfast in the late afternoon, just as the sun was setting. The air was crisp, the scenery was beautiful, and for the first time in a while, it felt like we could just relax and enjoy each other's company. That night, we had dinner with a few close friends who had joined us, Dylan and Lily among them. The conversation was easy, the food was delicious, and I felt like everything was going exactly as planned. But life has a way of taking your best laid plans and turning them upside down. A dance with the past. After dinner, we all headed to the lounge for drinks and some dancing. Sarah and I spent most of the night on the dance floor. She was always the better dancer, and I was content just watching her move, smiling at how much fun she seemed to be having. But then something unexpected happened. A man I didn't recognize walked over to us. He was tall, with a casual confidence that made me immediately uneasy. He tapped me on the shoulder, and before I knew it, Sarah was dancing with him. At first, I brushed it off, assuming he was just an old friend from her past. But as I watched them move, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. There was a spark in her eyes, a look I hadn't seen in a long time. She wasn't just dancing with him. She was fully engaged, smiling in a way that felt almost foreign to me. Feeling unsettled, I returned to our table, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. That's when Lily leaned over and said something that made my heart stop. "Isn't it funny seeing Sarah with Ben? They dated back in college. First loves and all that." I froze. Ben? Who was Ben? And why had I never heard about him before? The words "first love" echoed in my head as I watched them from across the room. My stomach churned with a mixture of confusion and hurt, the unspoken truth. After a while, Sarah must have noticed the change in my demeanor because she pulled me aside. I was expecting some kind of explanation, something that would ease the knot of anxiety tightening in my chest. But nothing could have prepared me for what she said next. "Alex," she began, her voice soft but steady. "The man I was dancing with, his name is Ben. We used to date a long time ago, before you and I met." I stood there, feeling the weight of her words sink in. It wasn't just the fact that she had danced with someone from her past. It was the way she had looked at him, the connection that seemed so obvious now. "I didn't tell you about him because I didn't think it mattered," she continued. "But the truth is, I never really let him go. We stayed in touch over the years, and lately, I've been thinking, I'm not sure I'm fully committed to this." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had spent 10 years building a life with this woman, believing that we were happy, that we had a future together. And now, she was telling me that she wasn't sure if she wanted to be with me anymore. "I've been questioning things for a while," she admitted, her eyes downcast. "That's why I've been hesitant about starting a family. I wasn't sure if I could see us doing that together." I felt my world start to crumble around me. Everything I thought I knew about my marriage, about Sarah, was falling apart right in front of me. She hadn't been honest with me, not about her feelings, not about our future. And now, she was telling me she wasn't sure if she wanted to stay with me at all. Discovering her secrets. That night, Sarah packed a small bag and left the bed and breakfast. She said she needed time to think, but I knew the truth. She wasn't coming back, not really. The life we had built together was over, and I had no idea how to pick up the pieces. For days, I wandered around in a daze, trying to make sense of everything. How had I missed this? How had I been so blind to what was happening right in front of me? I had trusted Sarah with everything, and now it felt like my entire life had been one big lie. I couldn't just let it go. I needed answers. So one afternoon, I found myself going through her things, something I had never done before. That's when I found the key. It was small, hidden at the back of a drawer in our bedroom. The kind of key that unlocks a storage unit. I didn't know Sarah had a storage unit, and my mind immediately started racing with questions. What was she hiding? When I arrived at the storage facility and unlocked the door, I found more than I bargained for. Inside were boxes filled with old photos, letters, and even receipts from hotels. The dates on the receipts lined up with the weekends. Sarah had told me she was working late or visiting her sister. She hadn't been doing either of those things. She had been with Ben. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. My marriage had been built on lies. For years, Sarah had been seeing someone else, keeping secrets from me, and I had been completely in the dark, taking action. I knew I couldn't handle this on my own. I needed help, so I reached out to an attorney, Michelle, to guide me through the divorce process. Michelle was no-nonsense, sharp, and determined to get to the bottom of things. She told me that the key to protecting myself in this situation was gathering evidence, anything that could prove Sarah had been unfaithful. I handed over everything I had found, the hotel receipts, the letters, the financial records. Michelle also recommended hiring a private investigator, Tom, to dig deeper into Ben's background. I wanted to know who this man was and why he had been able to worm his way back into Sarah's life. What Tom uncovered was shocking. Ben wasn't just some old college flame. He had a history of getting involved in other people's relationships, manipulating women, and using them for his own gain. He had done this before, destroying marriages, leaving behind emotional wreckage, and moving on without a care in the world. Knowing that Sarah had fallen for his manipulation hurt more than I could describe. But it also gave me the strength to move forward. I wasn't going to let this break me. The courtroom battle. When the day of the divorce trial finally arrived, I was filled with a mix of anxiety and dread. I had no idea what Sarah was going to say, and I wasn't sure how the court would see things. But Michelle was confident. We had built a solid case, and the evidence was overwhelming. In court, Sarah tried to paint me as controlling. She claimed that our marriage had fallen apart because I had been too demanding, too rigid in my expectations. She said that I hadn't supported her career and that I had pushed her away emotionally. But Michelle wasn't going to let that narrative stick. She methodically laid out the facts, the years of lies, the affair with Ben, the hotel receipts, and the storage unit filled with hidden memories. The judge could see that Sarah hadn't been honest, and that our marriage had been built on a foundation of deception. When the ruling came down in my favor, I felt a wave of relief wash over me, but it was bittersweet. I had won the legal battle, but it didn't feel like a victory. I had lost so much: my marriage, my trust in people, and the future I thought we were building together. Picking up the pieces. After the trial, I felt emotionally drained. The divorce was finalized, and Sarah was no longer a part of my life, but I still had to deal with the fallout. I had lost friends, people who had taken Sarah's side without ever asking for my version of events. Even my relationship with my family became strained. My parents, who had always loved Sarah, were shocked by the revelations, but it took them time to fully understand just how deep the betrayal had been. Michelle suggested I seek therapy to help process everything. At first, I resisted. I didn't want to talk about the pain. I didn't want to relive it. But eventually, I realized that if I didn't confront my emotions, they would consume me. Therapy wasn't easy. It forced me to look at the parts of myself I had ignored for too long: the anger, the sadness, and the feelings of failure. But slowly, I began to heal. I learned that I couldn't carry the weight of what Sarah had done forever. It wasn't my fault, and it wasn't something I had the power to change. I had to let go for my own sake. I started focusing on the things I could control. I threw myself into my work, taking on new responsibilities and pushing myself to grow in my career. I spent more time with the friends who had stuck by me, the ones who had believed in me when I didn't even believe in myself. A fresh start. Several months after the divorce, I decided to leave my old job. It wasn't that I hated it. It just felt like a part of my old life, a life I was trying to move away from. I found a new position at a larger logistics firm in the city. It paid better, offered more opportunities for advancement, and gave me the fresh start I desperately needed. Around the same time, I reconnected with Megan, an old friend I hadn't seen in years. We had drifted apart after college, but when we started talking again, it felt like no time had passed. Megan had been through her own share of hardships, and she understood the pain I was going through in a way that few others could. We took things slow at first, just meeting up for coffee or the occasional lunch. But as the weeks turned into months, our friendship deepened, and I realized that I was starting to feel something more. I hadn't been looking for a new relationship, not so soon after the disaster with Sarah, but with Megan, things felt different. There was no drama, no games, just honesty and support. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could trust someone again. Finding peace. Time passed, and little by little, I started to find peace in my new life. Megan and I grew closer, and I realized that the feelings I had once thought were love with Sarah had never been real. They were built on a fragile foundation, one that crumbled the moment the truth came to light. With Megan, things were different. There were no secrets, no lies. Just two people who cared about each other and were willing to be open and honest, even when things got tough. She wasn't Sarah, and that was a good thing. With Megan, I felt safe, and for the first time, in a long time, I felt hopeful. I still thought about Sarah from time to time. It's hard not to when someone you loved for so long betrays you in such a deep way. But I wasn't angry anymore. I had learned to let go of the anger because it wasn't serving me. Holding on to the pain wasn't going to help me move forward. It was only holding me back. Megan and I started talking about the future, about the life we wanted to build together. We didn't have all the answers, but we knew we wanted to take things one day at a time, and that was enough for me. Looking ahead. Now, as I sit here reflecting on everything that's happened, I feel a sense of closure that I didn't think I'd ever find. The pain of what happened with Sarah is still there, but it doesn't define me anymore. I've moved on, and I'm excited about the future, whatever it may bring. Megan and I are planning for the future, and while we don't know exactly what's next, I feel confident that we're building something real together. I've learned that life doesn't always go the way you expect, and people aren't always who they seem. But I've also learned that you can rebuild, you can move forward, and you can find happiness again. I'm no longer angry at Sarah. I've let go of that part of my life. It wasn't easy, but holding on to that anger wasn't doing me any good. Now, I'm focused on the people who truly care about me, and I'm ready to embrace whatever the future holds.